gift to be grateful. 'Tis a gift to be here. 'Tis a gift to be loved by neighbors we hold dear. And when we stand up for what we know is right, to be in the valley of love and delight. 'Tis a gift, 'tis a gift to be grateful.
It honestly feels very normal that there are women in the Glee Club, and I wish I could say something very inspiring about, like, I feel the legacy, but honestly, day to day, I don't think about it. I think that this is where I belong, and it feels strange to think it ever wasn't this way.
They had come out with a newspaper article, the New York Times, about the superwomen that were coming to Yale. And we just all seemed like we weren't superwomen, we were just normal women.
We suffered, as many Ivy League students do, from imposter syndrome, thinking that somebody was going to figure out that we didn't belong here. But at the same time, we also thought we were really hot stuff because we'd gotten in and there were so few women here.
I think my whole family was surprised that suddenly women were coming to Yale, and I was even more surprised that I got in and that I decided to go.
We decided to look for qualities in the individual woman that showed that she could probably handle a tough situation. For example, we were quick to admit a young woman who had 4 brothers, or we were quick to admit a young woman who had achieved a kind of national recognition as perhaps a violinist or an athlete or in some other way, because we knew that the women were coming to an institution that was innately, in some ways, hostile.
When I got to Vanderbilt, it was complete chaos. And men seemed to be all over the place. You felt like you were almost in an experiment.
I've often said that Yale did the right thing for the wrong reasons, because I had this sense, and I think most of the students did, that the reason Yale wanted to bring in women was because if it didn't, it would increasingly lose the best male applicants to other schools that did have women.
In an all-male kind of environment, you know, you're kind of focused on road trips and going other places. And the experience of having women in class, I think, just adds a whole different perspective and, you know, changes how you act. You weren't throwing things out the window, you know, or other stuff that went on.
There were 4,000 men, as we all know, at Yale. We all know it because Kingman Brewster made a big point of saying that Yale was not going to shy away from its commitment to give the country 1,000 male leaders a year.
Mother of men, grown strong in giving.
Originally, I thought it was going to be fabulous because, oh my goodness, it's a ratio of 8 guys to 1 girl. But it wasn't always that fabulous, particularly the upperclassmen. Many of them were set in their ways and, you know, had dates and had girlfriends from other schools, and a lot of them weren't that interested in interacting with women. But I really felt at home with the Glee Club, that they were very interested in having women integrated into the Glee Club, but I think that they really didn't know what to do with us at first.
I always felt that the singing program was underprepared. I asked about what the opportunities would be for me to sing, and I was told, keep your eye on the bulletin board outside Hendrie Hall, and you'll see something. We're working on something. So eventually, after a few weeks, a sign went up inviting us to audition for the Yale Women's Chorus.
That first year, the women had their rehearsals with a different conductor. Bruce Moore, and Fenno would have the men. So we did have a bit of a sense that we were being left out of something, especially when we found out that the men's group was going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Here is the great Yale Glee Club singing a medley of college football singers. So let's have songs. Let's have a wonderful fanfare.
And the irony was not lost on us that we had transferred to a co-ed institution only to be siphoned off into a special women's chorus, but it was understandable given the demographics.
Isn't that great getting up morning? Very well, very well.
Dad loved the idea of coeducation. It's just that for him, the immediate problem was that he was going to have to completely change everything he did. It wasn't like being an English teacher and now you just have some women in your class. He had to come up with a performing group with not many people to choose from. And what was he going to do with all the great arrangements and things he had written for men that were so successful?
For the first year, they included us in two ways in concerts. One was that when they did the main concerts, like the Christmas concert, they just stuck us in as one more group. The other thing that they did traditionally was to combine the Yale Glee Club with a visiting chorus of women for orchestral type material. And in that context, they substituted in the women's chorus, which was terrific because it exposed us as well as the men of the Glee Club to the larger repertoire and also had an occasion for us to sing together. There was a lot that was changing in those years at Yale, quite beyond coeducation. Just a few years earlier, Inky Clark had changed dramatically the ratio of public school and private school students who were accepted to Yale, and by implication, changed the socioeconomic mix. We were dealing with the Vietnam War era and civil rights.
I know that the men on campus were very upset, of course, about being drafted. Students would be streaming onto the green and taking part in all kinds of protests, riots, marches. It was a very frightening time, actually. I recently found a record from 69-70. The cover of that doesn't clue you into any of that happening. It just has an empty Hendrie Hall Glee Club room, and you get the feeling that everything is going on outside that window, not inside Yale, but outside Yale.
Over the Christmas break, I got a call from the two co-tour managers for the upcoming summer tour to Europe. And that was Charlie Gates and Mark Fulford. And they said, we don't have enough men signed up for this summer tour. We've been planning it for almost a year. And they said they'd make me the third co-manager if I could bring in my team from the women's chorus and fill out approximately 50 traveling singers. Did you talk to Fenno about including women on the tour before you approached me about getting the women's chorus to come up with the people?
Probably not, if I had to guess.
I never knew that.
No, I don't think so. I think Fenno, if we can be candid, I think Fenno was rather frightened of the thought of bringing women along on the tour. And so I think that was a big leap for him.
For me, there was a point when we were about a third of the way through the tour where we did an impromptu performance of the Randall Thompson Alleluia at a reception. And Fenno didn't put us in parts and didn't pull out the music. And at least for me, that was probably the point at which it all clicked in my head. And it just sounded magnificent. And we all did it right. And
it's very special.
It was very special.
When we came back at the beginning of senior year, I can't recall when it happened, but the name of the Yale Women's Chorus just gradually disappeared.
I got a crown up into the kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news? I got a crown up into the kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news?
And I was always grateful to Bob for treating me as a co-equal and insisting that I be a co-president for that year.
Good news, good news, good news, good news, ain't that good news? I gotta sing it, good news, ain't that good news, ain't that good news? I'm gonna lay down this world, gonna shoulder up my cross.
By 1977, no students remembered Yale as an all-male bastion. If my professors remembered it, they certainly didn't let on. We were utterly normal. There was one class I had in a building where I never did find the ladies' room. I don't know where it was.
I think that the acceptance of women at Yale came because women proved themselves. We proved that we could perform as well as the men, that we could get our own sports teams, that we could do all the same classes that the men could do.
The primary argument made for coeducation was that we were denying a percentage, in this case 50% of our population, the opportunity of a particular kind of education. Well, the same argument was made for minority students, Black and Hispanic in particular.
I get to Yale and suddenly I realize there are people with far greater privilege than I had, and with far greater privilege than most people have, including most white people. And that was just an eye-opener.
I have to say, frankly, one of the reasons I went to Yale was to feel like I was part of society generally, not part of a Black clique. I felt accepted all the way, and that was what I wanted.
But the fact that in the Glee Club, people from a different class than I was used to had voted me to be their freshman chorus president and then voted me to be their Glee Club president was affirming in ways that have been beneficial for my life beyond Yale.
When the population is normal, meaning it represents society, I think everybody's better behaved in general. So I have to believe that the appearance of women at Yale led to a more normal population, which certainly made it more comfortable for gay people to come out.
I didn't come out. Nobody could come out. It was don't ask, don't tell. I think the real reason was a lot of the kids were supported by their parents, and they were afraid that Mommy and Daddy would disown them, and they wouldn't be able to go to Yale anymore.
The experience of being in Glee Club really helped the whole process of coming out for two reasons. The first is that it provided a release from the rest of the work at Yale. The other reason is that because singing is a performing art, it is one of the activities that tends to attract gay people. And so I discovered, to my surprise, that there were other gay people also going through the same coming out process simultaneously with me.
But I did feel safer, actually, in the Glee Club. And I felt we were treated equally in both the Glee Club and the forestry school.
Really, it was the Glee Club family that was this bigger support system.
We really all were from different walks of life, really different perspectives. But the thing that brought us all together was the music.
And the feeling of being part of that, the feeling of being part of something greater than yourself, even for the brief moments that you're on stage, is a really incredible experience that I don't think anything else really gives you.
To sing is to be vulnerable. And if you're going to open yourself up, if you're going to combine your voice with other people and make music with them, you have to trust them. That has to come first. Lots of bass and baritone, please.
I initially wanted to write a piece that could celebrate something that the previous Yale songs did not mention, and that is how diverse Yale has become as the 21st century research university. And that's why I wrote, a lot of us traveled across mountains and seas to become this one community.
The work of making people feel included in a space that was not originally meant for them in some way is always work of a similar kind. Difficult work of having new conversations and putting new structures in place to accept people.
I think being someone who identifies as African American, who identifies as Latino, who also identifies as LGBTQ, I've been able to find spaces for all of those parts of my identity, and also spaces that explore the intersectionalities of those identities.
Yale is a place that is constantly changing, and I think it needs to keep being reminded that its progress should not stop.
What's so wonderful about the Glee Club is that, yes, we are old and we have a history, but that we're not scared to change our traditions and how we work. And the spirit of loving music and being welcoming and open and offering a home to anyone at Yale is what the Glee Club is about.